Hey guys, Kinsey here, and this is going to be my first video on my trip to Japan because I just got back and it was such an amazing experience. It was so awesome. I can't stress that enough. But this one is all about best places I drank beer while I was in Japan. And the next one will be pickups and video game stuff in Japan. But first, the beer! And beer is very readily available in Japan. There's vending machines, and there's also no open container laws, so you can buy it and walk around and drink. It's kind of great, kind of like Vegas, but better because it's Japan. And I want to highlight 4 places that I just absolutely loved. I have a couple of honorable mentions at the end because I couldn't really narrow it down. So to start with, my first highlight is going to be Arashi Yama. And what's great about this area is it's just on the western outskirts of Kyoto, so it can be a day trip. It's not too far on the train from Kyoto if that's where you're staying, but there's so much to do there. First of all, there's a cute little village with tons of shops and food and things like that. And when I was there, they had a special edition cherry blossom beer that I tried, and that was great. They just had it in little stands everywhere. That was awesome. But this is kind of a must-see area because it's not too far out of the way if you're staying down there. And there's the bamboo forest. So that's the first place we went. We walked all the way through the bamboo forest. It was absolutely beautiful. It is kind of touristy because it's one of the #1 spots people want to see, but I do think it's worth it. So I walked all the way through the bamboo forest, and there are some shrines and things along the way which were beautiful. But after walking through the bamboo forest, we decided not to go straight back down where we just walked. I was like, what if we go this way? I mean, it's the right direction for where we're going. So we ended up walking through this park. And then we went down these, scary stairs to try to get to the water. Because at the edge of Arashiyama Bamboo Grove, there's this big river. And it was, so beautiful. And it's on our way to the monkeys, which I'll get to. But as we walked down these kind of scary stairs to the river to walk along that, all of a sudden, there's a beer shack. What? It was amazing. It was we were all kind of this was the hottest day that I was there too. So it was in the 80s and we were just kind of doing some light hiking. So we were kind of sweaty. So all of a sudden there being this beer shack that had not great craft beer, but they had Kirin Ichiban, Asahi. They had sake cups. They had some fruitier malt beveragey things. So I mean it was kind of this amazing little beer shack. And so I got a Kirin Ichiban, I think. Yes, I did. And then we just sat by this river in Arashiyama and drank a beer before we continued on our hike. And it was I don't know, it wasn't the best beer in the world, but it was the best beer in the world because it was so good, so cold. Everything around me was so magical. It was like a dream. And after that, we went to the Iwadayama monkey park, which is totally worth it. It was so cool. There's just a bunch of monkeys walking around, but it's $5 500 yen to get in, so roughly $5, a little less than $5. But then what they don't tell you after you pay admission is that this hill is a fucking mountain. I thought I was gonna die on the walk up this mountain. By the time I got up there, I didn't even care that there was monkeys. But there's monkeys up there. It's fantastic. It's totally worth it. But that beer I had by the river was absolutely perfect. So I highly recommend checking out Arashiyama if you are in the Kyoto area. And next up is gonna be a beer. And so this is a Yuzu Salt Ale by Yoho Brewing Company in Nagano, Japan. And one thing I noticed in Japan, if it wasn't just an Asahi or whatever, on the menu it always just said beer. And I was like, who makes this beer? Where is this beer from? That happened all the time. Unless it was at a craft beer place, it usually didn't necessarily list what the beer was. So I wanted to pick this one because this is one I could get at my local bottle shop. And it's a yuzu beer, which I had a lot of in Japan. At a lot of restaurants, it would just say yuzu beer. And I'm like, well, that's the one I want because it's that or regular beer. It was pretty fun. And yuzu is a citrus fruit. So it was kind of a nice little change. All right. Let's take a look at this beer. Definitely a light beer. since it's a yuzu beer, so a citrus kind of lighter ale. Ah, smells good. Smells very citrusy and light and fresh. Very, very citrusy. Oh, it's a good thing. This would be perfect, actually, for sitting by that river in Arashiyama when it's 80 degrees outside. Because I'm apparently a heat weenie when I'm walking around, but whatever. It kind of tastes like a Pilsner. So, like, really, really light, but with a lot of citrus punch and just very fresh and really good, actually. I'm just gonna drink... This is the rest of the video. I'm just gonna drink this beer. But I was just really excited that I could get, after going to Japan, I went to my local bottle shop and I was like, what Japanese beers do you have? And it's not like a huge selection, but it's some, and it did remind me a lot of my trip, so. And at my bottle shop, one of the beers I drank the most of on this trip was Asahi Black. So good. If you go to Japan, try to find it, because it's like, it's a dark beer, but by Asahi, it's so good. And I'm trying to order it from my local bottle shop, and they are trying so hard. I will get it eventually. It's gonna be great. All right, and next, I'm gonna talk about Pontocho Alley, which is also in Kyoto, and it's really cool. It's a very, like, it's known for its traditional entertainment. It's this really small, like, cobblestone alley right by the Kamo River in Kyoto. And it has a lot of traditional entertainment, traditional tea houses, and it also has a bunch of like expensive restaurants because it's right on the river, but it also just has all these little pocket bars that were so fun to go to. And we were walking around, like, went to like 3 or 4 bars, and we went to this one that was just like fish bar that was down all these crazy stairs, and it was just a bar full of fish tanks, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So it was really fun because a lot of the bars had themes. We went to one that was kind of like old rock and roll themes, so it had a whole bunch of like show posters and stuff on the wall, and that was so fun. It was so cool because it was one of the first nights that we really like went out, like bars and stuff, so it was really, really cool to have that kind of experience the first time. And Pontocho Alley is also like, it has all lit up with lanterns at night, and it just has a really nice mix of like very traditional Japan meets, you know, kind of newer like bars and stuff like that. So it was really cool. And it is also, of course, on that river. So eventually we ended up just going to 7-Eleven, buying some beer, and sitting down by the river, and, you know, we bought some food, so we had like a little picnic, and this river was so fun to just sit by and drink. And there was a lot of people doing it, actually. And that was one of my favorite places to drink in Japan. And I guess there's like a theme of sitting by rivers and drinking, but you know what? It's so picturesque, it's so beautiful that it's awesome. And in the spring and summertime, they actually build out temporary patios on a lot of those nicer restaurants along the river. So they have a ton of outdoor seating. So if you want to splurge on a meal with a great view, that's a really good place to do it. It was so awesome. And that leads me into the next beer. This one's a little bit darker, which is my style. But this is the Hitachi Eno Espresso Stout. And Hitachi Eno was a bunch of great beers that I could find in Japan. And this is brewed and bottled by Koichi Brewery. And this one I have found that these are relatively easy to get at local bottle shops. So this is a Japanese beer that you can try at home if you've got a bottle shop or something, or people who can order you beer or whatever. It's good. All right, so this is an espresso stout. Oh, let me put it in the cup. I was just gonna go for it. But this way you guys can see the color. Yeah. Smells very roasty, very coffeeful. Coffeeful? Sure. Whoo, espresso. That's a lot of espresso. It's way more flavorful than I thought it was gonna be, which is a really, really, really good thing. So it tastes a lot like espresso. It's very roasty. It has, you know, a decent amount of body for a Japanese beer. Not a lot of Japanese beers are like really full-bodied, but This is pretty good, actually. Sorry, Yuzu. I think this dethrones you. Yes. This is so good. And it perfectly leads me in to the next place I loved drinking beer in Japan, and that's Hitachi Eno Brewing Lab, and it's just outside of Akihabara, and it's actually technically in the Kanda neighborhood, but what's really cool about it is that it's actually in the historic Monsebashi station, so it's in like an old train station, so the architecture is really, really cool, and it's a brewing lab, so I didn't do this, but it looks like you can like set an appointment to like kind of learn how to brew or maybe brew your own beer, or from what I was kind of gathering. But what's cool about it is that it does a lot of like collaboration brews and one-offs and things like that you know, you won't be able to get in bottles or things like that. And so I was originally shown this place after a long day of shopping in Akihabara with Chris Kohler, who works at Kotaku, and he's amazing. And so he was showing me around all the video games, and then he was finally like, you know what? I got another place that I think you're gonna love. And it was beer related, so he knows me very well. And this place was so wonderful. Like, it has like this big patio that you can sit on, and so you're drinking craft beer in Japan, which is like not as easy to find as you would think. But it has this like whole view of Akihabara because it's actually on a little river. Everything apparently is on a river, but but it was so beautiful. So it made for all the most perfect like beer pictures and beer selfies because you have all the lights of Akihabara in the background, but you're also drinking this fabulous beer. And I went there with Chris, and they have food. They have a really simple katsu chicken sandwich that was so good. But anyways, I went there with Chris, and then I met back up with my travel buddies who I went with, and I was like, you guys, I know that I've already been here, but I have to take you guys here because it's so cool. And they loved it as well because they are also craft beer people, and it was so good. So after a long day of video game shopping in Akihabara, I highly recommend Hitachi Eno Brewing Lab. And the best part about it is that we went there for like a snack and beers, and then we had just drank just enough that we were like, oh, remember that thing I was gonna buy at that store? Let's go back and get it. So it's a perfect like courage to buy that item that you weren't sure if you actually wanted. It worked. What can I say? All right, so the next beer I have is another one from Hitachi Eno because I loved it so much, and the other craft beer that I really wanted to showcase I couldn't get. So this is what I got. But this is also from Hitachi Eno Nest, and it is their white ale. So let's give this a try. Obviously a lot lighter in color than the Espresso Stout. It smells very like weedy, grainy, bready. I don't know, one of those. Also good. It has a little bit of almost like a Belgian-y kind of flavor to it, a little bit banana-y, which I kind of thought it might, just because a white ale, a lot of the times it's like almost like a Blue Moon kind of style where like, yeah, whatever. I'm talking down a hole. I don't know where I'm going. But this beer's good. I think the Espresso Stout kind of wins because, fuck, that was good. Anyways, back to this white ale. It's very, very crisp, and it does have a little bit of that Belgian-y flavor, which sometimes I like and sometimes I don't, but this has just enough that it doesn't kind of overstay its welcome. So that's normally where I kind of don't like it as much, but boy, do I like beer. And the last place I want to talk about is just outside of Harajuku, and it's called Beer Brain. And the one thing I noticed about drinking in Japan is that a lot of bars don't open until 5, which is, you know, fine if you're working, but when you're on vacation, sometimes you want a day drink. And the way a lot of the restaurants work, like, you get in, you eat, you leave. It's not a place where you, like, hang out necessarily, so it's kind of harder to grab a beer somewhere like that. So we were in Harajuku, and we were like, just did so much shopping. I bought this necklace. It's beautiful. And we just were like, okay, you know what? It's beer 30. And I was like on my phone, furiously looking for something craft beer. And because a lot of the places were closed. And lo and behold, I found Beer Brain. And what was so cool about it is when we finally got there, it was kind of like one of those food truck courts like you would find in like downtown Portland. So it had like this little beer cart, and it was so cool. It's like a little baby house trailer thing, but they have 5 taps, and they had it mainly so like 2 of them were local, 2 of them were imports, and 1 was cold brew coffee when I was there. And it was weird because the imports were like Lagunitas, which I can get around here so easy, and it was really weird to have, Lagunitas import, and it's $9, you know? So that was kind of weird, but also kind of cool. And so I tried one of the Japanese beers. Unfortunately, I don't remember what it was, but it was dark, and it was great. And we talked to the people there for a little while, saying how hard it is to find craft beer and how hard it is to find, you know, day drinking beer. And they were laughing, and they were like, yeah, no, it's true. That's why we have early hours, because we got you. And they were so nice. They even featured us on their Instagram page because they thought we were so fun and colorful, because all of us have colored hair and we stood out like sore thumbs. But this place was really cool. It doesn't have a table charge. Oh. Table charges. That's a thing. A lot of bars in Japan have table charges. It's kind of like a cover charge. But Beer Brain doesn't have tables, so no table charge. And there's a whole bunch of like outdoor tables there, and then a whole bunch of food stalls. So we went to a gyoza stall. So we had gyoza while we were drinking our craft beer. It was so good. And so I cannot recommend Beer Brain enough because they were so nice. They had fun stuff on tap. They had some stuff that reminded us of home, as well as trying to find, you know, some Japanese craft beer. And in that same area, there's another craft beer bar, but it doesn't open till 5. Of course. So those are my number 4 picks? 4 picks? I was like number 1 picks, but there's 4 of them. Those are my picks for my favorite places to drink beer in Japan. And my honorable mentions are the Kawaii Monster Cafe. That was one place that on the menu it just said beer. And I was like, well, I guess that's what I'm getting. Well, I did have a cocktail there, and it was called the Druggy cocktail, and I was like, well, this is awkward, because you had like 2 little vials that you mixed into your cup to make the cocktail, and I was like, makes me uncomfortable. But it was good. And there, the beer I got was served in like a graduated cylinder, and I was like, this is a thing, okay. But like, if you've never seen pictures of the Kawaii Monster Cafe, it's like bright lights and like everything's super big and cute and giant unicorn heads and monsters, and like it's a trip, and it was really fun. All the food is rainbow, which is kind of unappetizing actually, but it was pretty good. I think it's definitely worth checking out. And my other one is the Robot Restaurant, because holy crap, the Robot Restaurant. Drinks are readily flowing in that place, and that's the place that I saw the most white people when I was in Japan. But it's a crazy show. I drank the whole time. I was probably a little bit drunk because my memories of it are just like flashes of these like crazy ass robots and like big Gatling guns on top of Tyrannosaurus Rex and like flashing lights, and it was so intense and it was so fun and it's so ridiculous that I think it's worth it, even though it's totally a tourist trap. But it was fun. And my last honorable mention is the place that I found the most craft beer, and it's just drinking in Osaka. Granted, a lot of those places don't open till 5, but we went to 2 or 3 craft beer bars, and they were actually really good and very friendly, and it was amazing. One of them, I'm trying to remember what it's called, but I think it was called Craft Beer. But like, it was right next to this really beautiful shrine as well. So walking around Osaka and stopping in for some craft beers was also one of my favorite things. But it's just like a city. So, and that was in Nipponbashi, I'm pretty sure, area of Osaka. But I cannot recommend going to Japan enough, and hopefully if you're planning a trip to Japan, now you know a few places that are either beautiful scenery to drink beer or where you can get awesome beer. So thank you so much for watching, and you can find me on the internet at KinsZilla, KinsZilla, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And thanks for subscribing, and cheers.